I want to talk about a somewhat sensitive subject in Cyberpunk 2077. It is something that does bother a lot of people, so I'm going to try and approach this subject with tact and discretion, right? I really don't want to upset anyone, and of course I am talking about the fact that it's possible to turn the minimap off in this game. Yeah, okay. I know people are not genuinely getting insulted or offended by the fact that I play this game without minimap, but there have been a lot of people making comments who seem to be genuinely a little frustrated because I am making life a little more difficult for myself, and, well, they'd like me to stop. And unfortunately, I have to tell you, that is not going to happen. I'm actually quite far ahead now. I'm on about episode 23, and I have generally been playing without the minimap and enjoying myself thoroughly. It's not really bothered me at all. Has it made one or two missions a little harder? Maybe. Now, a lot of the comments have been along the lines of trying to convince me that it's perfectly reasonable to have a minimap in a game where there are cybernetic implants. It's perfectly reasonable that you have essentially what is Google Maps, a GPS, in your eye implant. And you know what? It absolutely is. It's perfectly reasonable. In fact, it's just like Google Glass, except the glass is in the eyeball itself. But I would argue it's perfectly reasonable to have a minimap in any game where there's a map. Doesn't matter what the game is. The Witcher, Skyrim, Fallout. If the game has a map that can be opened and you can see where you are and it has other landmarks, why can't you have the map open in your hand whilst looking around the street, for example? I mean, there's nothing unreasonable about playing Skyrim and you've got a map in your pocket and you take the map out and you look at it. Yeah? Why can't you look at it whilst looking around? There's nothing unreasonable about that. Now, some mini-maps tend to have more information on. They'll show enemies, for example, which could be considered a little overpowered. I will accept that. But at its, basic level, the minimap is no more hard to believe than a map in general. So, yeah, I mean, if there are people out there who believe that me turning the minimap off is somehow an indictment on them, and I'm somehow suggesting they're playing the game incorrectly because it's not realistic to have a minimap, it's not. That is, not what is going on here. In fact, I'll tell you now, things like the minimap in Skyrim, if there was a minimap mod in Skyrim, and I bet there is, I wouldn't be against actually using that instead of the main map. As long as I could turn it off when I didn't want it. Because that's why I'm turning the minimap off, guys. People think it's some weird role-playing thing. Some people think it's about immersion. Nobody seems to have hit upon the more obvious explanation that Gopher just does not like a messy, cluttered HUD. I find it really annoying and distracting and hideous. By the end of this, turn off pretty much every element that is not needed because I generally prefer an uncluttered heads-up display. I mean, let's go back to the Google Glass idea. Yes, it's perfectly reasonable to have, say, a GPS thing in Google Glass. Yes, it is. But you know what? If I couldn't turn that bloody GPS map off in my Google Glass when I didn't need it, I'd take the bloody Google Glass off. There's no way I want a bloody map there the entire time. I'm sit down and I'm watching some TV show on Netflix. I don't want a bloody mini-map at the top corner. I also don't want a little journal telling me I need to go and find and incapacitate cyberpsychos 1 out of 17, 24/7. I don't need my own personal mother to be telling me, constantly reminding me what I'm supposed to do. If that little journal thing popped up when the journal changed, when something, changed, I'd leave it up. If it faded away, you'd get something, let's say I killed a psycho killer and it went, find and incapacitate psycho killers 2 of 17, and then 5 seconds later it faded, I'd leave it. But it doesn't. It stays there the entire time. And I find it irritating. I find it really, really annoying. That is far nicer, in my opinion. It relaxes me. It allows me to just focus on what's going on. I would prefer to be able to turn off these little heads up display markers above people's heads as well. I like the idea of being able to look at people and figure out exactly who they are, but I don't want it there permanently. If I had Google Glass on and it just kept hovering a name over every single person I was talking to, it would drive me nuts. It would drive me insane. And I actually think this heads-up display needs a lot more options. If, for example, I could activate my scanner and the minimap appeared, or all of these, little quest markers appeared, or the journal appeared, that would be brilliant. If I got into my car and the minimap appeared, that would be brilliant. If I pressed the map key, but instead of tapping it, I held it, and it just showed me the minimap instead of opening the main map, that would be superb. And of course, those of you who used Friendlyhood for The Witcher 3 will know exactly what I'm talking about, because that was a mod that gave that functionality to Witcher 3. I would use the heads-up display elements, I just don't want them on the entire time. I find them distracting. I find them ugly. And yes, sometimes they would make it a little easier to succeed at a quest, but they would essentially make the game a lesser experience for me. Maybe not for you, and that's perfectly reasonable, but for me, I would not enjoy the game as much. I would rather fail the odd mission because the minimap was not there, and I've only actually failed one mission, and I'm not even totally sure that was because of the minimap. I am not convinced that people who play the game with a minimap and with the journal thing get that mission first time as a general rule. I'm not saying there isn't someone out there. I'm sure someone's busy typing now. Oh, I completed every mission first time, never saved scummed once. But I suspect there's an awful lot of people who the first time they did that particular mission, and those of you who have been watching my Let's Play know what I'm talking about, failed it and had to retry it, because I'm not completely convinced having the minimap or some journal update would have made a difference. I may be wrong. I'll find out, I guess. Well, I won't find out, because I'll try the mission again when I do a second playthrough with slightly better knowledge of what I'm supposed to do. But if that's the case, if I did fail it because I lacked those heads-up display elements, so be it. I'm enjoying the game far more because I've got this lovely, uncluttered, beautiful view of what is an incredibly beautiful world. I say beautiful, I mean, obviously I'm in a fairly seedy part of town at the moment, but you know what I mean. This is amazing. And I prefer to play like this. So it's not that I disapprove of heads-up display elements or find them to be bad or against role-playing. I just find them somewhat distracting. Even that there, telling me there's a fixer in that direction, that annoys me. That annoys me. I like the functionality. Again, if I could just go scan, look around, and all those things appeared, and then I turned off the scanner and they faded away a few seconds later. Brilliant. But it's just, that's it. It's nothing more than that, guys. It's a personal preference, a choice, I like it this way kind of thing. It's my thing. I'm kind of amazed people don't realise this. I made a mod that specifically hides the heads-up display when you don't need it. If all I'd wanted to do was disable the heads-up display, I could have done that with a single console command. But I recognised the usefulness of the heads-up display. So I made a mod. I took time to make a mod that allowed me to keep the heads-up display, keep its usefulness, but remove its annoyance. And I'm the same with other things. Those of you that have seen any of my tutorials know that my desktop looks like this. It's completely and utterly empty. There is a drop-down area over here with a program I use called Fences. These are all my VR-related games. These are all my non-VR-related games. These are all the things I use when I'm doing modding. This is the Skyrim-specific stuff. There's a bunch of tools down here that I seem... Oh, right, no. I can actually disable certain panels that don't even appear when I'm doing tutorials. If I double-click, a lot of them reappear, and I now have some tools. I even have a sound test thing. I keep my desktop very cluttered so I can focus on things. I prefer it this way. I have a very blank backdrop. I used to have a different colour, but I've made it black so that it's easier on the eyes. It's more relaxing. It causes less light to go in my eyes, and I can work for longer. This is just how I prefer to do things. I like to have what I need on screen, and if I don't need it, I tend to close it down. I'm the guy that only has 5 or 6 tabs on his browser, and they're all things I'm currently using. When I see somebody else with a browser and I can see they've got 35 tabs open, it drives me mental. That I don't know how people live with that. I don't. I've got no idea how people put up with that. I don't know. But that's just how it is, right? Different people. And that's basically it. And I know that's probably not going to be good enough for some people, and there will still be comments trying to somehow find a flaw in my logic or some inconsistency, even though my logic is basically, this is just how I prefer to play this game. And it might not even be this way for every single game I ever play. There may be a game where I just do prefer to play with a minimap. And I have tried moving around in this game with a minimap, and it is actually kind of still fun. And in fact, driving is better. It's more fluid because I can use the minimap instead of constantly opening up the normal map. It is more fluid, and I will admit I probably would prefer to drive with the minimap on all the time. I just prefer walking or moving around and doing things without it on. That's the thing, and it's a trade-off because at the moment there's no mod or no option to have the minimap just come on when I'm driving. The way I would have to do it is get in the car, go to the menu, go to the UI menu, turn minimap on, then when I get out of the car do the same thing, and that would be frustrating. So, it's until we get a friendly HUD for this game, I'm probably going to prefer to play without it. The same is true of all other things as well, though. There's the subtitles, the floating subtitles that appear over people's heads. That kind of annoys me. And again, if I had Google Glass on and it was busy putting subtitles above everyone I walked past, it would drive me nuts and I'd end up being a serial killer or something. So I can see why it would be useful. And if I could press a button that would allow me to have subtitles so I could see someone's conversation if I wanted to see it, if I wanted to read a conversation that was just out of earshot or translate it from a language I don't speak, yeah, it'd be nice to have that button. It would be nice to have that button, but I don't want it on all the time. And that's it. That really is it. There is no science here. This is just, I'd prefer it this way. And the instant there is a mod like Friendly HUD available, or when they release the modding tools and I get some time to look at it, maybe I can even make something basically myself, I will do that. I will definitely do that. But in the meantime, I'm just going to be playing without it because that's my preference. That's it. And I hope that puts that one to rest, although I suspect it probably won't.